and then we're going to look at the paperwork tracker, and then we're going to go into more specific 16 to 18 paperwork and bursary. So just to go through some online safety and etiquette, if you can just ensure that everything around you is in a professional setting as much as it can be in these circumstances. Ensure your video remains to show that you are attending and you are engaged with it. And please, can you all remain muted unless you have got question sections in it. But if there is anything you want me to stop and ask, if you can just raise your hand and I'll just pause where I am. And then comment in the chat facility. But if somebody can just keep an eye on chat for me and just let me know if I need to pause at all. And if this needs to be recorded, please, Danny, can you just hit record on it if we are recording?
Yeah, I can do that. We are recording and I'll monitor the chat for you, Chelsea.
Lovely, thank you. Okay. So, first of all, I've just put in a little task of what are the MIS paperwork requirements and deadlines. So just a quick one. When should, you can unmute for this, by the way. So when should learner enrolment be submitted? Anybody?
Before the course begins?
Within the first 5 days, we aim for the first 5 days of the programme. So if the programme starts on Monday, by Friday, we want them enrolments in the office by that date at the latest. It gives us a chance to just make sure, but if they can be done prior to the course, that's even better, because we can make sure that our registers are set up and everything like that, and that we've got all the learner details prior to the course starting so that we can support you with attendance. And then I've got named 3 documents which should be submitted every week to MIS.
Programme tracker.
Yes.
Register.
Yeah.
Differentiation sheet.
Yeah. And then along with that, there should also be your session plans, scheme of work if there's any amendments to it, assessment plan if there's been any amendments to that as well. And then what day should weekly documents be submitted?
Thursday.
Excellent. Grade trackers on a Thursday, everything else we give till Friday for. Okay. Deadlines. We set deadlines to give you the maximum amount of time to do what you need to, and we work to the minimum amount of time we could possibly do our jobs within to meet funder deadlines. We do not give you a short amount of time and we sit with it on our desk for like days on end. We literally have the day it comes in and possibly another day to 2 days after that to do what we need to do to get that to funders. Every learner has a value to us. So every learner enrolment form has a monetary value. If we do not submit the paperwork to the funder, we do not get paid to teach that learner. So essentially then we are teaching them learners for free, which is why we put so much pressure on having the enrolments come in a timely manner and having them as completed as possible, to the point that there is nothing missing from that information. So it speeds up our process of getting that out the door, because until that's gone and reached them, we don't get paid. And if it reaches them and there's something wrong on it, we don't get paid. So I know we do everything we can for the learner and support them, but if we do not have the paperwork, we're not getting paid for all the good work you guys are doing. Also, the deadlines we give you, same as I know it is for quality, if you do not communicate to us before a deadline that you cannot meet that deadline, we can't adapt our schedule to accommodate for that. So in the background, Claire does invoices, she does HR work. So she set a deadline for something to come in. She's scheduled her workload for that week around all the other things she's got to do and what she's expecting in. She then needs to find a different space of time and rearrange her workload to accommodate a deadline being missed. So in the same that it's expected you'd go to quality and let them know if something was going to be late, so they can rearrange their structure and what their timetable to be doing. We need that same that needs to be applied to us as well, so that we can also do that, and then I can manage the funder expectation as well. And I know I say we worked 5 working days, but to put that into context, when we work with Beth, we only have 3 days to get that learner information to them, and that is a contractual requirement from them. So when I say we work to very tight deadlines, that just gives you an example of how tight we are working to deadlines to get them met. Next, I've done just a brief timeline to show when things should be submitted. I've based it on roughly a 6-week programme. I know we do shorter, I know we do longer, but just to give like a little bit of a guide to what we expect in, and then I've just shown a bit of a breakdown as to what we use that for. So programme starts on day 1. On day 1, we need to know who's on that programme. We need to be able to have a register created, accessible to the network, and also prepare that on our PICs so that we've got an internal central place to be able to find all this information. All this information we have to share with funders, so it's so important that we have it. So while we're touched on that bit, I'm just going to touch on registers. I just want to reiterate the importance of a register. It's such a simple document, but it's a necessary document, and it's also a legal requirement. That document can be called upon if there was ever an inquiry into a learner through the police or anything like that. They can request to see our register to see that person was here. Registers cannot be sent in at 11 o'clock with learners showing as being in at 1 o'clock on that same day. We cannot preempt that a learner is going to turn up in the afternoon. It has to be as accurate as possible. If you've got 12 learners, we need 12 learner names. We need to see clearly on that register who is in and who is not in. And if they're not in, if we know the reason why they're not in, that needs to be shown as well. Then I've put day 5, submission date for enrolment, initial assessments and stage 1 PDR. When we receive them documents, we have to enter all that data onto our PIC system so that we've got that central database. If we've done the generic forms, which I know we've started rolling out, we then have to adapt that to be on the correct funder paperwork, whether that's actually we have to type that paperwork or we go onto an online system and we input that data. It varies from funder to funder, which is why we brought the generic enrolment form in. And then also, that's the point we'd expect to receive the initial assessments as well and the stage 1 PDR. When we receive that stage 1 PDR, we can then start preparing your stage 2 PDR, ready to send back out to you, ready for that point in the programme. So I've gone roughly like day 20. So we'd expect you to, if it's a 30-day programme, we'd expect the review to start being done on day 15, but bearing in mind, you're probably not going to do them all in one day. We want them in on day 20. So the end of the 4th week. And then when that comes into us, we need to go through that and start to prepare the stage 3 using information from stage 1 and stage 2. If you're on a longer programme, then we obviously just use it to prepare the following stage 2 but review 2 PDR. We also have to save this all centrally. It all gets linked onto the learner file, both on the network and onto PICs, and we enter to say that we have received that. Some funders request that we send reviews off to them. Some don't want to see them, but they want to, if they pick up the phone and say we want them reviews, we need to have them accessible to give to them. And they all work on different time frames, which is why we go for a standard 4 weekly, because then we know by hitting every 4 weeks of doing a review, we are meeting the guidelines set by every funder, not just 1 or 2, and then changing the dates. And it keeps what you're doing consistent rather than having to change you from reviewing every 4 weeks to every 6 weeks. It keeps it the same no matter what funder you are delivering for. And then say we've got a 6-week programme, day 30 would be the last day of programme. So at the last day of programme, we'd be looking to be doing the exit surveys and the stage 3 PDR with the learners. From that information, when that comes in, we do specific funder end paperwork. It varies for every funder we do, but they all need to have a survey. which is why it's so important that that survey in the PDR is completed. If they're going on to another programme and we're not doing that survey, there is still a survey that needs to be completed, which usually MIS do send out to you. But if you ever get to the end of the programme and you've not got a survey to give to your students, please contact us and we will send you that to get that information done. From that point, again, we have to send it off to different funders. We have to enter all the information onto different spreadsheets, onto PICs and onto our network, so we have everything possible that we could ever need on these learners. And then just to touch on your weekly submissions, each week the following should be submitted to the course's email: a group profile, a scheme of work, assessment plan, session plans, grade trackers. These are checked by quality and need to be readily available for funders or submitted to the funders. I know that we are moving to Padlets for a lot of things, but until that is fully in place, these documents, if you haven't got a Padlet set up for your programme, it is vital that these documents still come in via the course's email so that we can upload them to the relevant folders, and then that's where Jen will go to do her weekly spot checks. So not only is Jen looking at these, but then I do a monthly audit of the folders every month with Emma Vars, so we're also looking to check that we've got everything, because then we have funders come in that do monthly audits as well, and we need, by sending it all in weekly, we've always got something to be able to evidence. If they pick up the phone and say we need to know what's happened from this period to this period, we're not scrambling around trying to contact the tutors. We've got that information on the system that we can provide. Is there any questions so far? Is everybody okay?
No, I think it's really clear and precise, Chelsea. I think it's great.
Right. If you need me to stop at any point, just tell me, otherwise I will just keep talking. Okay.
Yeah, keep going.
So next, we've got the programme paperwork trackers. So I'm just going to pull one up for you, just bear with. Let's hope this works. Tell me it's not working.
Is it opening in a different screen, Chelsea, and you need to go and now share that?
I think I've got it now. Can you see that?
That's it.
Lovely. Okay. So we rolled out the paperwork, the programme paperwork tracker, because we just thought it gave both MIS, tutors, managers, everybody a go-to central place where they can find out all the information about the programme that is on. The way these have been set up, they are formulated. I know there's been a few issues with like initial assessments probably not being done, so it still shows up that the enrolment's not completed on this first summary page. This first summary page will only pull through information from the course documents page. So please always go back through the tabs along the bottom and check these pages. As you can see, the top bit where it's got enrolment documents, the initial assessments form part of that. So if they're not in, that will always show as enrolments not come in. I know that can look a bit confusing because you may think, well, we've sent all the enrolments, it's gone off to the funder. But if we don't have it there, we've not got that clear, we've not received everything, to keep being able to keep a check on that as we go through the course of a programme, as by the time the learner's getting onto core to success, we should be starting to look at having the initial assessments for them and being able to record that. So if we take that away from there, there's no clear visual as to who we're still outstanding that for. So that's why that has been kept on there. And it's only at that point does that turn it green. But please don't think that when you look at the summary and it's saying, and it's still in red, that we're saying we've got nothing. It's on this second page where all the information is. I think if I slide, yeah, and it's got all the results. And then we've got the same on here for exit paperwork as well. We also have a section on here for PDRs. I know I think the last few we've had a bit of confusion around. The PDR section on this, when all of this top part of the paperwork tracker is completed, when we put in the start date and the end date, the PDR is formulated so it brings up all the dates then for the PDRs. We've looked at it as a team, and it is going to be something that we review, just because I'm aware that sometimes there's like bank holidays or there's week closures which aren't included when the dates are formulated. So that's something that we will start to check moving forward to ensure that that is as accurate as possible, and that the information we're giving you as when it needs to be in is a realistic view of when the learner's on programme. So we're not expecting you to send in anything like during a week like this when there's nothing on. We shouldn't be expecting you to be doing a review with the learner. So that's something that we are going to just adapt slightly. So do look out for that, and it is going to change. We also, when these get sent out, it does come with an email. Usually if there's any specific information that is missing or that's still outstanding, it will usually get put into that context on that part, just so you can all see it there, so it's clear when you go onto it. Let me go. Wait, missed my page. So we're going to send it out every Friday, the paperwork tracker. Going forward, we're going to also, in the context of the email, it will have this was completed, last completed on, and a time and a date. So if, for example, it's Friday, we've done it, something's come up, the phone's going crazy, we've not sent it out at 9:30 like we wanted to, it's been sent out to you at 12 p.m, it will say on there that this was completed at 9:30. So then if you have sent anything else in after that time that we've said, you will see that that's not been put on there, and you'll know why it's not on there when it's been sent out after you've sent the document in, if that makes sense. And just to reiterate, the summary will not show as green unless all elements on the course documents tab are received. Oh, just before I let you ask me any questions, I just want to cover off, I've lost everybody. I just want to cover off quickly e-signatures. I did send out before Christmas a new e-signature format. Did everybody get that? Do we know? Yeah.
Yes.
Did I roll that out to everybody, or was it just to managers? I can't remember off the top of my head.
That went across the board, Chelsea.
Everybody. Can we ensure for any new programmes going forward that is the standard template we are using for e-signatures? Now we're moving back more and more to going back to virtual learning rather than moving closer to classroom learning. It is becoming a big requirement from funders that the e-signature template that we're using is to that standard, that is detailing what the learner is signing they're giving permission for their signature to go against. So we'll need to be using that for any enrolments, any PDRs, any exit paperwork, to ensure that we have that as the standard, that this is what we do, and that needs to come into MIS with everything that needs a signature on. So if you're sending in a PDR that's got an e-signature on, we have to have an email confirmation from that learner for that e-signature, as that will get picked up on in an audit that we could have just typed that in. We've got no evidence to say that they have given us permission to use that. Is there any question? Go on, Emma.
You know, with the e-signature, like if we were to see the student face to face, whether that was socially distanced on a driveway, whether that's in the centre, are we okay to still get their physical signature? Yeah, that email template is only in place of a wet signature. If you're going to see somebody, if you do one-on-one, if you're doing a drop-off and it's possible to get a wet signature, that is the preferred. Any other questions on what's been on so far?
I do have a question.
Yeah.
Basically, when we did the cohort with Matt, because we used Google Classroom, when the e-signature, it said handed straight in, and apparently it went straight to courses, or did it go straight to courses?
Dom, can you come in and just check on that one for me? Because I didn't have any access.
So with that one, there were some that were sent straight into courses, yes.
What, from the Google Classroom or?
Yes, yeah, it wasn't a lot, which I know me and Beverly did pick up on a bit later on. So there was some that came through, but some that didn't.
Yeah, because that worked really well, because what, as maybe other tutors will back me up on this, the e-signature is a bit of a problem because it comes in as an email that we have to get them to okay the e-signature. But the way it was projected on Google Classroom, that they just went on it, I don't know how it was done on Google Classroom, but they just submitted it there and then, and it went straight to head office. That seems to be a little bit of an easier option for learners to do.
Yeah, I know me and Charlie did discuss this, and Charlie was going to have a look at it and see how it did come through. Did we get anywhere with that, Charlie? Because it did still need to list that same context, because we can't just, what we can't be seen to be doing, if this makes sense, is we cannot be at the start of the programme. Obviously, I know we've done it in the past, but we need to change it going forward. Is we can't go at the start of the programme and say, oh, this learner's given us permission to use their e-signature on this. If we're saying at that point they've given us permission to use their e-signature on their review, what's to say they've ever seen that review and it's not been done and they've not had eyes on it? We're then not able to evidence that in an audit to say, no, see, they've seen this review, they're happy with it, because we're saying they gave permission for that 10 days earlier. And we've just got to really tighten up around them areas, because come to be sat in an audit, how are we evidencing that they've seen that without having them say, yeah, I've seen this piece of paper, I give you permission to have put my e-signature to it? We haven't got anything. So
certainly from when we looked at it last time, and this is probably going to be a conversation for another time, but with the Google background noise, with the Google Classroom, I think there was whether it could be printable. I think we said. So with those short courses that you're talking about, Beverly, obviously, like Chelsea said, the important thing is that it's standardised across the board from what we're doing, and that it's absolutely auditable. But if we can make that auditable from the Google Classroom, then absolutely that would be beneficial. So I suppose at this point in time, it would be a case that we can possibly look at that again. But I suppose the overall thing would be from the audit perspective, from the email, wouldn't it?
Yeah, so if there is a way to do it on Google Classroom, we're happy that we'll look at that and see if that will cover what we need. But again, we couldn't just have that for the enrolment. It would then need to come again when they do a review. It would then need to come again if they did an exit review. Just that we've got that information there to be able to give with everything that we're saying they've seen and signed. We have to have that to say that they have actually seen and signed.
Okay, great.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I know it's not the easiest way of doing things. I know it does cause us some issues, but that's where we will get picked up by funders, because otherwise, as well good as it is us saying that we know they've seen it and done that, they don't know that. They will need to see evidence of that happening. Is there any other questions? Anything on the paperwork programme trackers or anything like that anybody's got any queries on? Needs further information on, wants to suggest a change to happen to?
One thing from Matt in the chat box,
Matt,
Chelsea.
yeah.
Matt said, do we have any plans to move all the enrolment forms onto online platforms to improve access and times? If you want to go first.
Don't really know the answer to that one right now. It is something we have spoken about before. It is something that we have mentioned. We do have a funder where we do everything for them online, and it does work really, really well, but we need to look into how that is, how accessible that is. Are we still capturing all the same information? And then for our department, how that looks to then be transferring it into other places. So like I say, we use a very generic form so that we cover everybody's requirements, but then it does all need to be distributed to the correct funder. The way we work it now, you'll all know, you used to have all your Keats enrolments, which is different to Essential Beds enrolments. And in Bedford, we do a lot of BESS enrolments. Every enrolment is so different that we started to think it was a bit unfair on you guys actually having to learn all the requirements for every different funder, because we could change it. You could be teaching a pathway and your funder could change from one part of the programme to the next part to the next part, and every single one has a different requirement. So us expecting you to know that and to be able to hit all that deadlines that are needed for different funders isn't actually that fair on you. And Beverly, them short courses, sometimes they're going through 2 different funders depending on where the person lives. So for us to expect you to teach one course and meet 2 different funder requirements, that's really unfair expectation to put on a tutor. So that's why we've centralised it all, tried to make everything as generic for you guys as possible, so that it's the same from one course to the other, and we now take that and we deal with that within the office. So our workload has increased, but we think that's the fairest way to do it, to make sure that funders get what they need and we keep it as generic and simplified for you guys as we can, so that we're not changing you from one to another all the time. You're on mute, Beverly.
Oh, hang on. Can you hear me now? Yeah? Yeah. Okay. The only thing that we had an issue with when me and Matt did this other course was, these are adults we were dealing with pretty much. And when they filled out the enrolment form, which was great because it was short and sweet and to the point, the only thing that was missing was the previous address if they haven't lived there for 5 years.
Okay.
So what happened is they were getting me following up on that. Some of them that had issues doing it because, again, their devices they were using, it didn't work, a lot of them, so we did it. So then therefore we filled it out, and therefore then AZAR had to go back from the funder's point of view and find out if they'd been at their previous, their address less than 5 years. Sorry?
We'll get that added onto the form.
Yeah, it just seemed that they were getting a bit angry and anxious being called by SSG all the time when they were trying to learn on Matt's course. And yeah, a lot of it, that was pointed out a lot. So, I mean, yeah, that is just a pure easy mistake to make. But yeah, to save time, yeah.
That form was very new. That's something that
just jump in there, Chelsea. So it does ask for previous address on there.
Okay.
It was on there.
Yeah.
But it doesn't say if less than 5 years. Now, we know as working with them and filling out the forms and as funders and as training providers, but they probably think, oh, well, I don't need to put that in there. They don't need to know that because I've lived here for 2 or 3 years. But from a funding point of view, we need to know that.
Yeah, that's fine. That's coming from a different angle. No problem to change if they've lived there in the last 5 years on that one.
Yeah, that would be just a help. So then we're not doubling back and forth to everybody.
Yeah, no problem. I'll change that right away.
Thank you. Yeah, this form is quite a new form that we brought in quite quickly, not that long ago, just because these short courses was just so, the turnaround on what we have to do paperwork wise is so quick that we just need to try and simplify it. Is there any other queries, concerns, anything on adult paperwork or generic paperwork, as in what you need to submit, timelines, anything like that?
Sorry, can I just add a bit of context to my question?
Yeah.
Because I recognise it's not necessarily an easy thing to do. The biggest issue that I'm facing, I can't speak for others, is a device issue. Yeah. So when we were in a classroom and we've got printed out forms, obviously there's no issue. But when we're sending over documents on Word or Excel, a lot of our learners haven't got access to a laptop, and even if they have got access to a laptop, they haven't got the necessary programs on that device to be able to access it. So that was really the basis behind my comments, to which I think is a relatively simple thing, albeit time and probably cost, is that if we had some way of putting the core forms on an online platform, then all of our learners could access that, because all of our learners would have access to the internet.
Yeah, it's not something that I really want to pick up on now, just because I don't know the ins and outs and the IT behind it. I know we've discussed having it something on the website before. I don't know whether it's gone any further in the new website design that we did, whether that's something that we could add to that. So I would need to take that away and do that away from this platform.
Yeah, I just wanted to give some context.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I've made a note of it, and it's something I'll pick up with the relevant people away from this. Is there anything else? Because I'm quite conscious that what I move on to next is very specific 16 to 18 paperwork. So I was going to say, if you're an AEB tutor, I'm quite happy for you to dial out of the next bit if you want to, but I just want to make sure that if you need anything else covering, if there's anything else paperwork-wise you're doing you're unsure of, that I've covered it, that you're not going away with any questions.
It's not really a question, Chelsea. It's more a quick bit of clarification.
Okay.
Because I've got, I knew I had something to ask you, so I've got the enrolment form up in front of me, and it's just something that I know. Like I said, there's probably a very easy answer to this. On the declaration of criminal convictions, do you have any spent criminal convictions? Obviously, if they say no, it's not an issue, but it says here, we need to know about unspent relating to serious offences. Is it worth having a separate section saying, if you put yes, what is it? Because I've had a couple of people on current and previous courses which have said yes, and they've turned out to be something incredibly minor that they did 20 years ago. So when I rang them up to fill in the obvious paperwork, they couldn't remember any of the details.
I personally think it just leaves that prompt there to do the criminal conviction form.
Okay.
I think as soon as we get a yes, regardless of what it is, we should be following that up straight away. Thumbs up to Danny, so I said it right.
No, that's fine.
Just in case, because there has been the occasion where the odd one's got through and it is a serious conviction and it's not somebody that we are able to work with under the circumstances of the business that we are in. So it does pick that prompt up to make that call, have that conversation. Hopefully it's just something they did when there was a child and it's very petty, but it just captures all of it rather than anything slipping through the net.
No, that's course, but I wanted just to clarify. That's fine.
Really quickly, just one more thing for me, Chelsea, not a question again, just something about terminology, just because a couple of people have mentioned one document by two different names, so I just wanted to really quickly pull that together. So I think Jeremy mentioned the differentiation sheet at the start, and also we've obviously mentioned the group profile. That's because I think we used to call it a diff sheet back in the day, and then it's moved and grown into a group profile. So that is, just to clarify, one document. It's not two separate things. And also grade tracker, program tracker, again, same thing. That's your Thursday program tracker. I don't think there was anything else. Same lesson plan, session plan. Yeah, same thing there. I don't think there was anything else that we've discussed that was of different terminology, but if there is, if that pops up, just speak to Emma or I or whoever, and get that clarified as well.
Anything else at the moment?
Chelsea?
Yeah.
Sorry, just before you move on and people disappear, can I just ask now if Amy and Hannah, sorry to put this on you both, but do you mind staying on just because of how close we work in the Bedford Centre? And I know that previously I've lent on you for support with 16 to 18s. Do you mind staying on just to listen in? Because I think it will be, I'd rather you know than get a question in a couple of weeks' time supporting Matthew, for example. At least we're all aware as a team.
Yeah, I was going to hang around anyway, so it's fine.
Okay. What I'm moving on to now is very specific 16 to 18 paperwork. If you don't deal with 16 to 18 paperwork, you don't feel it's not something you're likely to be doing and you want to leave at this point, that is absolutely fine. I have checked it through with Charlie. If you don't want to stay on, he's happy for you to leave. But if you deal with 16 to 18 in any capacity, please stay on. Okay, but if you do go, thank you for listening and bye. And now I'm going to go back to sharing my screen. Except for I can't find it.
Thanks. Thanks
Can
a
you
lot.
see? No worries. Can you see that at the minute or not? No.
Not yet. Not yet.
Okay.
Are you using two screens, Chelsea?
No. I purposely took one away so I didn't get confused.
So yeah, go to the
I think I've got it.
first on the left.
Got it. 1 second. Okay.
Well, there you go.
Can you see?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Okay. 16 to 18 paperwork, the joy of everybody's lives. Two main funders for this academic year, which are NACRO and Work Pays. I know everybody hates this paperwork. I love it. It's my favourite. The paperwork for these two funders, the layout is very, very different from one another, but essentially they require the same details. They both have it now in two parts, which are the enrolment form, which is the learner personal details. I really want to stress on this part because we've seen it this year. If we have no ID for a 16 to 18, well, for any learner, we cannot get them through for funding. They have to have ID as part of that requirement to get them through for funding, and an individual learner plan. You must have evidence on the individual learner plan to show that we have considered options for the learner and decided that our programme is the most appropriate for them, and it shows that how the units will be covered to meet the learner's needs from why they are enrolling onto this programme. So we're going to look at the Work Pays one to begin with, and I've tried to simplify what we look at in terms of I am only going to go through Work Pays individual learner plan, and then I'm going to do NACRO's learner assessment because they need the same sort of thing, but they call them different things. I'm not going to go through all the other paperwork because that's a lot more simplified. I think this is where we need to, this is where we're getting feedback and errors coming up on. So, oh, let me just. Just let it load. Okay, some of you will never have dealt with Work Pays before. Some of you may have looked at this form before. Some of you have completed it. Some of you may deal with Work Pays in the next few courses that come up. So, still loading. A lot of the information that's on this first part of information, the initial assessment, they should be doing that on the first, either prior to starting the programme or on the very first day of the programme. That is when it is expected that an initial assessment would take place for a 16 to 18-year-old learner. When that comes through to us, we update this section of the enrolment form. So generally you don't do this part, it comes into us and we do it. We would then also, because we would have checked their PLR to see what their previous learning is, we would complete that bit as well. Or if the learner's already ticked it with you, we would just check that what's on that bit matches up to what we're seeing on their PLR. Any qualifications that aren't listed on the PLR, so if they're saying that they've got a maths GCSE and it's not showing on their PLR, we would expect that that would be wrote on there and we would have a copy of that certificate to show that they have actually got that qualification. In this part, additional supports. If anything is needed for a Work Pays learner, it would need to go into this box. Generally, we don't do functional skills with Work Pays, but I know on this current programme, they are doing a little bit of a step 2 English and maths. So if they need support for them subjects, or just in general day to day, they need a little bit of support with their writing, their reading, anything, it should be detailed in this area here so that the funder can also see that. And if there was to be doing functional skills, it would be especially important that it's in there if they needed like extra time and exams. Strengths. So the learner should go through this bit and circle what they think suits them, where they are on these parts. This is our favourite part to do. We've had a couple of audits recently with WorkPays, and we've taken on quite a lot of feedback from them at the moment, and there's been a series of amendments which I've had to do to get the files through audit, and also that I'm still sorting out amendments on currently. The goals for this, the short-term goal should link back to the referral form, which should come in from whatever referral agency they're coming in from. This short-term goal should reflect what was put on that referral form. Their long-term goal can be whatever they want to do in the future, but we need to look at it as if that's their long-term goal, what are we doing on this programme for that learner for them to end up being able to move on towards that long-term goal. We have to be really careful of the way we word things. If we put in any of this document on this part, I'm going to use functional skills as an example, but if we put Ben is going to pass English functional skills, and then Ben sits it 3 times and doesn't pass it, he's not achieved. He's not achieved what we've set him out to do. So we have to be really careful of wording, and it should read like, have the opportunity to sit English functional skill exam. We can give him the opportunity, and we can evidence that we've given him the opportunity. We can't make him pass. So it's just being really careful and thinking about what the learner is needing to achieve from this programme. We then move down the document to the journey. The journey is, what are we going to do to achieve the goal? So what we need to think of here is the fact that WorkPays has our scheme of work. They've got a referral form saying why the learner's being referred. They're going to have a timetable which should be reflecting what the student is doing in the classroom. This journey should reflect what you are going to be doing with this learner in the classroom against the scheme of work to help them achieve their goal. Keep going back to the top. The long-term journey, how will the time they're on this programme and what they do on this programme link them to their long-term goal in order to be able to set them up to move on from this programme. And then we have a challenges and barriers. Anything that we have that we know about this learner needs to be on here. If there's any difficulties, if there's any barriers, it needs to be detailed as to what they need to support them, and how, if they're getting any outside support, it needs to be detailed. If they need a one-on-one learning assistant, it needs to be detailed. We need to have everything on here. If there's an EHCP, put a note on here that there's an EHCP for the learner as well, and that details are in that EHCP. We need as much information on this document as possible. I'm just going to come off it now. Can you all see my screen again? I can't see anybody if you're nodding, by the way.
Yeah, we
Yeah, I
see
can see it.
screen.
So when I put it like this, I can't actually see any of you, so I don't know. Okay. So the reason goals on the referral form set the delivery requirements for the programme. If they're saying that they want to go and do a sports coaching programme and they're going to do this, that and the other, that's on their referral form, then why are we having them on this programme? We need to make sure that everything ties in, everything loops together, and you can 360 from the scheme of work, the referral, the goals that you're setting, the target reviews that you're doing. right into timesheets that are coming back to evidence what they're learning against, so that when we come to the end of non-regulated work and we say that the learner has achieved this, we can evidence every section of that they have actually achieved that. The learner, the individual learner plan records what support the learner needs to address the referral. The agreed training activities support the achievement of these goals. Timesheets should record the training delivered and must include all of the activities identified in the individual learner plan. If the learner leaves the programme and has not achieved all the activities identified and recorded, the achievement payment cannot be claimed. For non-regulated achievement, payment in ESF funding, there must be evidence that the agreed programme of activity documented in the individual learner plan has been completed. This is why the link between the individual learner plan, the scheme of work and the timesheets are so important. So I'm just going to come off that now, because the next thing we'll go on to will be NACRO, which will be similar, but it will be different. So if there's any work pay specific questions, Emma Graham.
It's not a specific question, Chelsea. It's just because obviously I've got to move on to an external meeting.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that for the people that are sat in here that maybe haven't been involved with the paperwork before, so I know that we've got Beth and Christina, and I know how Christina's mind works. This is going to be quite overwhelming. There's lots of new information.
Yeah,
but,
it's a lot.
This is a real just good insight into seeing what we are looking for with this paperwork. For my team more specifically, I think that we're moving in the right direction with the standard of our paperwork that we submit. But there's one really key thing here that where we're hitting a brick wall, and we're losing it at the first hurdle, which is, and I'm going to be very open with the way that we've been doing it, we give the paperwork to the students, we say, please complete this, and then we walk away. Whether that we're walking away because we're dealing with other students, whether we're trying to set something up for an activity, but we can't do that. And that's something that comes down to myself and Charlie. We need to look at the that first day process, or that before first day process.
I need to stop you there. This document needs to be done prior to the first day.
Perfect, thanks, Chelsea. So we need to make sure that before that candidate has started the programme, that we're allowing the time for either that person who's doing the enrolments, whether that's myself, Charlie, Matthew, Beth, whoever it might be, to be able to give you that opportunity to sit with them on a one-to-one and fill out that paperwork without feeling rushed, without feeling like you're having to balance 4 or 5 candidates. But this is really, really helpful because we're starting to understand what sort of things you're looking for, because I know that we've previously gone into some of these paperworks and it's a little bit of guesswork. Yeah. So Chelsea, this is really, really helpful. So thank you so much for running this.
Yeah, just to jump on what you've said there about day one. So for this paperwork, when we do these individual learner plans, when we do the enrolment form, work pays do not see this as fitting in with their non-regulated guided learning hours. So if you're doing this on day one of programme, you've lost guided learning hours from day one. It has to be done prior. Like we've gone through now, we do have to do an IAG timesheet. This is the information that should be on that timesheet, and it goes through as something different to them funding wise. So the way we need to look at it is you meet with them, you're doing the IAG, you're doing the paperwork, you're doing a timesheet to reflect all this, the learner signing that timesheet off. We submit that to them as a separate thing to what your non-regulated is. Matthew.
Yeah, quick query about the enrolment forms. Problem I had in September and previously is sometimes we're not fully aware of what pages we need to complete. I know you've gone through it there saying that you'd fill in all the previous grades and what functional skills levels they're working towards. Is there a way that we can communicate that a bit better between business and ourselves? Because I'm sometimes getting it and getting them to fill in pages where actually you guys will fill the pages in. even if it's just like a template or like a guide that you send over saying these are the pages or the sections that we fill in, and these are what the tutors fill in. I don't know if there's just a way to do that just to make it a bit more efficient.
Yeah, what they've actually done this year, when we started with this group, we hadn't had their new paperwork template through for 2021. So we had to go with what we had from the previous academic year. When they've actually then issued us their 2021 paperwork, they've broken it down and they've put it into, this is your 3-page enrolment, this is your 3-page learner plan, and it's all broken down now. So going forward, if you was to start a new course, you would only receive the initial paperwork that we actually need completing. It wouldn't come in, because before it was like a 20-page document, wasn't it? And not all of it needed to be done. They've broken it down into, it's probably in about 7 different documents now, so that you will only receive from us the paperwork that's needed to be completed to enrol them on the programme.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. And when I say that we want paperwork in within 5 days, with 16 to 18, preferably, yeah, it's great if we can have it all in together. But if on that day 5 you only hand us back the enrolment because you're keeping individual learner plans just to look back on again, just to make sure you don't need to add anything else, fine. Keep them, make sure that is as good as you can have it, because it won't get submitted. We cannot submit paperwork to WorkPays until we have covered off, I think it's 7 guided learning hours for accredited and 13 for non-accredited. So we can't, until they've been on programme a few days and we've got them timesheets, we can't submit it anyway. So if you've had your one-to-one and then they come into the classroom environment and you're thinking, I need to add to that, add to it. Yep. Who wants to go first? Charlie, Emma, Matthew, your hand's up. I don't know whether that's purpose.
Hi, Chelsea Wiley. Thank you. I don't know if this is a question for you. I don't know if this question can be answered. We know that the WorkPays enrolment form is obviously very strict with the times of what we're doing, especially linking in with the timesheet. Very similar to what Emma's said as well. Obviously, from our point of view, and probably yourselves as well, we would argue that a lot of the work that we're doing with the candidate in terms of setting goals and everything within the enrolment paperwork is part of their learning time. What's the reason from WorkPays that it has to come beforehand, if that makes sense?
Because you are doing an IAG with them to identify why they are on this programme. That should be done prior to the learner being on the programme. So we should be able to evidence that we have done a adequate IAG, that we know the scheme of work, and we're saying this person is suitable to do this programme because our programme will meet we've got the aims in this scheme of work which are suitable for this learner to come on and do this programme. So we should already, when you're meeting with them, be linking what they need to what we can deliver, and that should tie through the paperwork.
Yeah, thanks, Chelsea. Thank
you.
Does
that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Is the initial assessments and the stage 1 PDR, do they need to be done before the first day for WorkPays, or can they be done during the first few days?
Initial assessment has to be done either prior to or the first day. PDR can be done within that first week.
Okay, all right, thank you.
We haven't actually used PDRs for WorkPays yet. I think we scrapped that a little bit, didn't we, and just went back to their reviews, because their reviews were kind of duplicating work throughout it. Yeah. So we've kind of just gone back to WorkPays reviews because their paperwork is so strict that I can't send them anything different because they'll throw it back at us straight away. We can't do that. So to stop the confusion, stop the duplication, we just do their review for the time being. How we've done with NACRO is we've adapted their review into our PDR. I haven't had the chance to see if there's a way that I can do that with the WorkPays one yet to stop the duplication happening. But it will be something that I do look into. Is there any other WorkPays questions? I know that's only one document and there is more, but the others quite standard in terms of it's consent forms, it's monitoring disclosure, it's induction forms, it's enrolment, it's things that we cover on every programme that we do. This is where we get different when we're doing the learner assessments and stuff. So is there any more specific work page before I move on to NACRO? No? Excellent. Okay, let's see if we can do this again.
Chelsea Emma's just said her goodbyes on chat.
Okay. Okay. I'm going to bring up first of all the NACRO learner assessment form. This is different in terms of layout, and there's a few more boxes on this to what there is on the work pays one, but there are sections that we're expecting to see the same sort of detail. So, again, like the other one, the first part of this form would come into training and we would go through and do a lot of this, which we could take from the PLR. And again, if they've got stuff that they're saying isn't on their PLR, but they can produce a certificate for, we can add that onto it. Attendance rate whilst at school, college. If we know that, great. If we don't, we just put not known in that box. If they've been on a previous course with us, we can look back at the data and find that. Basic skills. This is where, again, the initial assessment, again for NACRO, should either be done before or on the first day of learning. This is expected to be filled in. If we are doing a NACRO course, unless the learner is exempt from doing maths and English, they will be doing either GCSE or functional skills, regardless of level, and this needs to be filled in. Even if they are not doing, if they've got 4s in GCSEs and they're not going to be doing GCSEs, I would still expect to see this box filled in to show that you know that the learner's got them grades at GCSE and that you are happy with their understanding and that they can listen and write. And I would expect to see something still in that box to say that that conversation's been had and we know where their strengths are, where their weaknesses are.
Chelsea, quick question on that whilst you're there. Just remind me, the summary, are we referencing what's previously happened at school from their previous quals, or are we summarising from their diagnostic results with us?
Bit of both.
Stick a bit of both.
So yeah, if you can see from their diagnostic result, like, oh my God, this person just cannot do times tables at all, put that in there because you know it needs to be worked upon. If you know like that they got 6s at GCSE and they're not going to be doing anything, I would put in there that got good grades in GCSE at school, didn't struggle, really academic, and just have it in there. So I'd use a mixture of both to cover it.
Thank you, Chelsea.
Okay. And then we go on to what subjects are of interest to the learner. So it's just tick box exercise, covering it off. And then the next bit is prior subject knowledge, understanding. So in this part, if they've done anything, if they've gone and done, different schools teach different things. So some schools may have covered off like a bit of leisure and travel and tourism, or they may have gone when they did work experience with school and gone to a beauty salon or something like that. If they've got any understanding of a prior subject, let's have that detailed in there so that we know where it is. If they've got a CV that they've done at school or anything like that, or they've come from one of our courses, so they may have a little bit of knowledge, let's have all that detailed in there so that we know where we need to stretch their learning and where they need more help. And then you need to think about what suits the learner. Are they needing more employability skills to help them be more work ready, or is it more that they need qualifications that they need to stretch the learner? So it can look at what sort of progression they would be looking to move on from after the programme. And again with this one, we learn on to learning support. There's a box here. So if the learner has any specific support needs that require any adjustments, if we need one-to-one, if we need mentoring, if we need time out, if we need exam extensions, anything like that, that it has to be detailed in this box. If we're not putting in these boxes that that a learner has something and they need 30 minutes extra in exam times, and then we get to them doing GCSEs and we're applying for exam extensions, we have to send all them exam extensions and stuff like that to the funder. So I know that's not going to happen this year with the current climate, but just it's happened in the past. So we do need to make sure we've got all that down. We had a learner in the past as well that had been with us throughout 2 courses, I think it was. It wasn't until we got to the 3rd and was doing GCSE that we actually found out for sure that she had an EHC plan. And that's 2 programmes we could have had more understanding of her, had better support in place for her, but we just didn't know because she was unsure and we had never dug further in that conversation. So it's really, really important that we get such an understanding of the learner's needs so that we can make sure that the programme they're on and the delivery to them suits what they need to get the most from it. If a learner says they are unsure if they've got an educational healthcare plan, please send me their details and we will pick that up with the council or previous school to check that information to be sure whether they do or not. And then if they're receiving anything from outside agencies, it needs to be in these boxes at the bottom. So attendance. So here, if they were suspended from school, if they left school early, any periods of absence needs to be in this box. If they've been poorly, if there's been mental health issues, anything like that that's meant they're not able to be in education, we need to have that detailed here as well. We need to be able to understand if they've been on a previous course and they've left that programme, why that was. Why was it not a good time then, but now is okay? We need to make sure we're best prepared to be able to support the learners to complete the programme that we're putting them onto. Personal circumstances. This can cover anything from being a young learner to not having a fixed address, to can't get in due to travel issues, absolutely anything that they have going on away from education which could disrupt their education. So if we're saying that everything's rosy, everything's all good and there's absolutely nothing wrong for that learner, if we're then putting in a bursary for travel, it's going to be asked why they need bursary for travel when you've not put anything in there. It says everything's fine. We need to just make sure that the information we're gaining from these learners is as in-depth as possible. We need to be prying the information from them to make sure that we can best support them. What is your assessment of the learners' personal social behaviour and attitudes? So this is your view of how they have been during, if you've spoken to them on the telephone, your IAG with them, if you've done a group session prior to the course starting, anything like that, the first couple of days in learning, if you want to go back and add more to this, anything that is your assessment for the learner about their attitude, the way they behave towards their peers, the way they behave towards staff, their communication, you know, anything like that needs to be in this box. That can then be transferred to be used as one of their targets to be reviewed against. This document that you're filling in now, if there's anything on this that's like, could be an area for improvement, that is what needs to be taken to be put onto the review to be the targets to be reviewed against.
Chelsea?
Yeah.
Could I just ask a question about that?
Yep.
This form itself, is it ever going to be seen by the learner again? If that makes sense.
The targets from it are.
Right. What I'm trying to get at is about if we were to write down an accurate summary of maybe one or two of our candidates, The candidates then reading that summary probably wouldn't come on the course because they'd be quite upset about how we perceive them. But by writing that kind of summary down, that demonstrates the journey they've been on and the distance they've travelled at the end.
Exactly.
So trying to find a balance between professional.
It's the way you word it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's very much like we discussed yesterday within the CPOM statement writing. It's almost like you need to be accurate as you can, but be prepared that the candidate will read it.
I guess it falls into like your group profile and stuff like that, though. If you're picking up stuff in this document, that's when you need to be thinking, I need to transfer this into my group profile as well, because it should be on both.
But I think, again, it will only help us by investing that effort.
The time.
That's wrong. By investing into that short, early point, that will help us in the long run, won't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Next, we'll go on to their employability skills to support work placement or job. As we all know, usually on these programs, we are doing a work experience placement. So we just need to have any details of any previous work experience, whether they've done any with school, whether they've had a voluntary job, a part-time paperboy job, or anything like that, where they've had any previous work experience. We include dates. I know sometimes it's hard to pull dates, but if we can at least get like a type of month and year and a rough how long it lasted, it's better than putting nothing if they have done something. And then if there's any barriers to the learner securing a placement. So you've got to think about where they live. Could potentially arrive travelling to and from a placement cause them barrier. Could there be barriers there? Do they have learning problems? Is there confidence issues? Is putting somebody into a work experience placement going to be, are they going to need support for that for the first day till they've gone in and they've settled and met somebody? That's the sort of thing that we need to be filling in. If there's any barriers at all that could potentially stop them going to a work placement, we need to be putting that in there. And then we need to be looking at the career aspirations and what type of placement is suitable. So you need to be thinking about in the boxes that the learner ticked at the start, what are the areas that they are interested in? If they're saying that they want to be a stuntman and we're putting them into a shop, why are we doing that? What are they gaining from that could help them with their future? So you just need to think really carefully about where you're putting people on placements to make sure. And if it is something like that, you need to be able to evidence why you're doing that. There needs to be a reason why. So is it because they need to work on their social skills and putting them in that place with a change of people coming through the door that they're having to speak to would help them embrace that side of it? It just needs to all flow and be matching up to what the learner needs and what will help them on their progression to their goal. So we move on. At this point is where you set the targets to be reviewed against. So your targets, if there's any, like I said before, if there's anything in that first bit that we filled out that could be used as a target, do that. So the first bit of vocational is the targets that you're going to set against the main qual of the programme. Please don't just put to achieve the programme. It really does need to have more detail than that. It can be a small goal which can be achieved and then we can replace it with another goal once that one's achieved. But it just needs to be, if it's to hand in a specific unit on time or anything, it just needs to be achievable. It just needs to be smart. And then we go to English, and I'm going to cover English and maths ones together. So for English and maths, if your student's not doing English and maths, you don't have to put anything into them bits because they're not doing it. But then they are actually incorporating English and math into everyday situations. So you could always just have in there, you know, just to ensure that your assignment writing is up to a high standard and that your punctuality maintains to a level, just so it's something that we're working on, but they're not actually going to be sitting any exams for it because they don't need to.
Chelsea?
Yeah.
Just a quick point. from experience in the past on these targets, just quick query, if they're doing it, do we have to fill in all 3, or can we do 1 or 2 depending?
You don't have to do all 3. I would always probably go for at least for 2.
Okay.
But you don't have to do 3. But again, like I said, on maths and English, if they're not doing it and you are filling 1 in, just fill in 1.
Yep.
Because you don't need to set them 3 English targets when they're not even doing any English subjects.
Yeah. And the other point, previously these have been every 4 weeks. Are they to be done instead of PDRs or as well as?
What I've done is I've taken the PDR and I've taken sections out of the PDR and put this into it.
Okay.
So that you'll still receive a PDR, so that we still get a survey done at the end of the programme and stuff like that. But the only time that you will write on the PDR about the work that the learner is doing is against this part.
Okay.
So that you're not duplicating your workload.
No worries. Thank you.
So if we go on to the employability and work experience, so this needs to be thinking about, again, back to your assessment of the learner and preparing them for a work experience, a progression, employability. What are we doing in non-accredited? What are we doing to get work experience that could be set as a goal? I know we do use work experience quite a lot in it to be engaging with employers, then probably going for a mock interview with an employer ready for it, and they're all really good ones because we can actually see the progression from the start of the programme into that placement happening. And then we've got the personal development, behaviour and attitudes and welfare. So again, think of your personal assessment of them, think of our KPIs that we have, because they're really good ones to use. If we're worried about a learner's punctuality, there should be a target there for them to achieve, and we should be trying to move that up as it improves. And then let me just where's my PowerPoint gone? So, enter as much detail as possible in all areas. If this is the document the funder sees and they then ask to see your group profile, it shouldn't be completely different to read. Your group profile is your working document, so you would expect to see something from your learn assessment potentially in there, and then how it's developed through on your group profile. Ensure that the personal circumstances is as full as possible, like I mentioned there. If a learner needs bursary support for travel, but it's not mentioned in their personal circumstances, when that bursary application comes in, it will be challenged to you as to why they suddenly need it. Targets for review should be achievable by the end of the course. If they're achieved early on, they can be changed to another target to review against. So if you are doing very like baby steps into a target, they need to be changing on a regular basis to ensure that we're the learner is progressing, because that again will all be in your programme tracker, which, as you know, we do send off every month to NACRO. They do see your tracker, so they would expect to see that your reviews are in line with where your tracker is going. If your review's saying that the learner's not engaging and they're doing no work, but your tracker's telling them that the learner's on target and they've done everything, there's going to be questions asked. All these documents all linking together all the time as a 360. So if we've got any information incorrect anywhere, it will be picked up. Are there any questions on the learner assessment? No? Right. I'm going to go on to bursary. Now, I don't think many people have ever touched upon the bursary much before. I know we did a little bit last academic year, but there's been some big changes to it this academic year. Sorry, that's my dog. Shh. the most important thing I can tell you about bursary is if a learner is going to need travel support, it's so important that at the time you first meet with them and you are doing IAG, that conversation is had and this document is filled out. Bursary applications are not backdated. So if you get to 6 weeks into the programme and you go, oh, where's a bursary application, NACRO will not backdate that to the start of the programme. So it's so important that if these learners need support, we are doing that from the first moment we engage with them. We know what support they're going to need. These forms are being filled out. We're asking them to provide their evidence. So when we send off their enrolments, we are sending their bursary with it so that can be actioned straight away. There is a free meals thing in it, but the free meals have changed. Last year was able to claim £3 lunch money. This year we're not actually able to do that. So where it's saying free meals, that's expecting that we have a canteen on site or we have a contract with somebody that delivers food in. We don't have that. We cannot provide that. So we can only really look to do travel bursary this academic year. So it's just filling in all the learner details. The bank details has to be the learner's bank details. They will not pay bursary into a parent bank details or a friend's. It has to be the learner's own bank details. There's 3 different ways that the bursary is done. We've got vulnerable, discretionary, and then there's another one, what name I can't remember, just bear with me. Exceptional. So the vulnerable, if you are under 19 years of age and can answer yes to any of the following: that you are in care, placed in foster care by a local authority or an unaccompanied asylum seeker, a care leaver, or receiving some kind of income support or universal credit. Most of our students fall under or receiving disability allowance or personal independence payments. There's more option here because they're claiming for themselves anyway. There is a box on that one that shows that if there's any other financial support costs they need help with, they can put the details off there. They can't guarantee that it will be paid, but they can put things there. At the top in this red bit where you can see we are unable to use the bursary fund for general living costs, i.e. mobile data, toiletries, utilities, rent. Last academic year we could actually put down mobile data because they could get away, they was using the internet to be able to log on and do their work, but that's all gone this year. They've had their bursary fund reduced. So most of our students fall under discretionary bursary. They're over the age of 16, under the age of 19, or if they're over the age of 19, they have an EHC plan. If they're over the age of 19 and they have an EHC plan, that is the easiest bursary to put through because we already have that EHC plan and we don't need to be going to the parents for anything else. If they don't, and they're between 16 and 19, the parents or the learner have to be in receipt of one of the following up to £30,000 a year, and we have to be able to evidence it. The only evidence we can use is the evidence listed in the evidence required boxes.
Chelsea?
Yeah.
So quick query. I know you just said about mobile data that they're not going to fund that now.
Yeah.
Just looking ahead to when I have my NACRO course, and I don't know, other tutors might be the same. Now they're working remotely. Do we think, like, obviously NACRO won't be paying for travel costs, for example, and possibly meals, etc., because they'll be based at home. If there are ones that are possibly in our groups that don't have internet access, for example, do we think it's worth possibly asking the question as to whether, especially over the next 6 weeks, for example, that those of them that can't get onto internet, would they be able to get bursary funding for that rather than what they possibly might for bus travel or food?
There is another bursary form which is a a one-off bursary form claim. I haven't looked into that. That's a good point. I've not looked at that to see what that one covers. It's usually like if you need work experience, you need some steel toe cap boots, you can probably put in a claim to see if you're eligible to get help towards that. So I'll make a note of that and I'll have a look at that form and see if there's anything there. And if not, I'll speak to NACRO and see what their advice is on that. Okay. Because they've not released anything to me.
I think that's a really good point you've raised there, Matt. Because,
yeah, I do.
If it's coming from a singular pot, knowing NACRO prior to Richard leaving, they would have made that happen. I don't foresee there being much change in culture there or approach. The reason they've had their budgetary purse strings tightened is they gave it away and they wanted these candidates to be benefiting as much as they possibly could, as opposed to what some other funders do. So I think it's definitely worth an ask there, Chelsea.
Yeah.
And Chelsea will probably back this up with more clout than myself, but my experience is always, Matt, that if we propose that, the second question very quickly will be, well, why do they need that? And our answer needs to be ready to say, look, they are literally going to pause their course. They are going to pause, and then there's a chance that they're going to fall off and not return. So we need this to keep them moving forward. That I would imagine is the only argument that will win. But really good question to ask, I think.
Yeah.
Yes, cool. Thank you.
I'm not going to read through all this. You can kind of see where it's going. It's got what the evidence that can be used. It's got the evidence that they need, the dates that it needs to be in line with. They need to. The big thing here is if we are saying that they need travel costs, we have to have the evidence from the travel company's website. So we'd have to have the bus route and the bus cost, and then they would back that to make sure the amount where they're requesting is actually what they need for that travel. Only in very, very exceptional circumstances will they give bursary for the use of an own vehicle. It's not something I've asked before and they wasn't happy with it, and we had to go down the bus route regardless of learners struggling to get the bus. So it is very exceptional circumstances that they'll look at that. I'm not going to stay on free meals because it's not something that we have the facility to be able to do. This is the other part. So we've got exceptional hardship fund to support travel costs. So if you do not fall under any of that criteria, but your personal and financial circumstances might prevent you from participating in the course, then it can be detailed in here and it can be applied for that way. It's not guaranteed. None of these are guaranteed, but there is this option available there. Can you all see my PowerPoint again?
Yeah, I can see that, Chelsea.
Cool. Okay. So bursary can only be paid into the learner's own account. This cannot be paid to a parent or a guardian. We do not offer free school meals as we do not have the facilities to do these, such as a canteen. Lunches would have to be requested in any other financial support costs that you need, but that is only if you fall into the vulnerable bursary. We cannot guarantee that if a bursary is applied for that it will be approved, or that if it is approved it will be for the full amount that the learner has requested. Bursary applications should be completed as soon as is possible and evidence submitted. Bursary payments are not backdated and are only paid from the day that they are approved. So that's like a brief overview of the bursary. Matt, I'm just going to take your question down again because I will raise that, and I'll have a look at the one-off bursary form just to see if that would cover anything like that before I go to them, but then I will go to them for their advice on if they've got any advice on that. Is there any questions around bursary? I know it's quite a minefield and it's a lot, and that is just one of probably 5 documents, but that's the most regularly one that would be used the most.
Can I just pose a question which possibly will need revisiting? And again, apologies for my naivety if it's already there, but do we, and if we do, are we doing it enough about advertising access to this pre-enrollment? So through IAG sessions, coming onto a course, so they are already with parents, guardians, social workers thinking about filling forms in, thinking about what evidence have they got to prove their case before we then come to the 11th hour of trying to rush around and get it all pushed through, because I've seen it from both sides. That might be something that we need to just look at again, whether it's a simple leaflet in hand that they take away with them once they've had their IAD session, or if that previously exists. I'm sorry, I didn't know.
Yeah, just quickly on that, Danny, short answer is yes. So all of the partners that we're working with at the moment, Emma and I, that with the IAGs that we're doing, they're aware that we can offer bursaries with NACRO, and forms and details of that will be provided throughout the IAG essentially. So yeah, it's short answer.
So they know, yeah, brilliant. That's good, because then they can start to prepare the details that they then need around bank accounts, around bus routes and things like that. So it's not just left to tutors on the first day scrambling to try and sort somebody else's life out. Cool.
Yeah, definitely. Chelsea, quick question from us, unless you wanted to come in on that at all.
No.
Yeah, quick question. So with the with IAGs, when we've completed the SSG application form, so I'm thinking of the current IAGs that I've done for Area 2 with potential January starts. I know that Matty and probably a few of Emma's guys have got people starting in January as well. Will that be transferred, pre-populated onto the NACRO workplace form for us to then go and action with the guys before we then look at it with the candidates throughout the enrolment process?
If we've got it all and you just pop that request in, yeah.
Cool. Lovely, lovely, lovely.
Any other questions around any 16 to 18 paperwork that we've done, or is there anything that I've not covered that you wish I had covered, that you've got a question about that you want to ask?
Chelsea, Danny's just typed in here in the chat box. What can we do if a candidate does not have any ID, such as never owned a passport or has lost a birth certificate? Do we have any options to help?
Okay, this needs to be looked at on the first day there's ever been contact. So the minute it goes from being a referral into whether it's Emma, Charlie, a tutor that's asked to do that IAG, then questions have to be asked. Do you have any form of ID? WorkPays is very specific. It has to be a birth certificate or it has to be a passport.
Can I jump on that? Sorry, yeah. Sorry. I was going to say, can I jump on top of that then? So would they accept a photocopy, obviously, a scanned copy?
We don't even need a picture. We need to have the number from it. Right.
Okay. So, sorry, a number from it. So it has to be an ID from a selected group of identification. Is that right?
It has to. For WorkPays, it has to be a passport or a birth certificate. They will not accept anything else. It has to be a passport or birth certificate.
If the answer is I don't know, or we'll find out, that's fine. But what if, like Danny's stating here, because I do know of in the past students that
I'm getting to it.
Sorry.
Slow down. So if that first meeting, when you meet for an IAG and they go, I've asked ask them up before they even come to the IAG, have you got it? It gives them time to look for it, gives parents time to look for a birth certificate. If they come to the IAG and they're like, we absolutely do not have this, that is a conversation you need to have with your line manager. Are they able to be supported in getting that birth certificate? To get a birth certificate, I think it's about £12 to £15. That learner on your programme is worth about £3,000. Now, are you going to support them and sit with them day one to get their new birth certificate done and potentially pay for it for them in order to have them on your programme? At that point then, if we know that you've sat with them and done that, you know that that birth certificate is going to be coming in and you're going to have that number. The same thing needs to happen with the national insurance number. At the IAG, if they haven't got a national insurance number, you need to sit with them and help them get that national insurance number. These are things which, if we don't have the ID, there's no point in having them on the course because we're not going to get paid for it. We've got it currently where we've had the feedback from WorkPace to sit with them and do the birth certificates, and we're waiting for them to come through. These two learners have now gone all the way through the course and we've had no money for them at all because we cannot give their ID in. So if they come and they've got no ID, it has to have that conversation decision falls with their area manager to make that decision as to what they're going to do.
Yeah, so just to come on to that, Chelsea, yeah, exactly that, any concerns around that, please pick a conversation with myself or Emma Graham. 99% of the time, like Chelsea said, that conversation has already been had before it has come through. However, it does occasionally come through that is still the case, partly because these things take a while to process, especially in the current world we're living in. But again, just liaising with myself and Emma to support with that. Alternatively, Googling it always helps because the answers are always there. That's all that Emma and I do. We only Google it because we don't know the answers as well.
NACRO is a bit more flexible in that we can have the last 4 digits of their bank card if we've seen their bank card, and we can also use their national insurance number as their ID. But because WorkPace is specific ESF funding, it has to be a passport or a birth certificate. Hope that clears that one. Anything else? No?
No, thank you, Chelsea.
Nothing on the chat, no.
Cool. That's me done then.
Thanks, Chelsea.
I can go and have a drink now. I didn't know I could talk so much.